The Last Jedi as a movie has an almost unrivaled ability to make people go, and while there are loads of people out there who have their completely legitimate reasons that they either enjoy it or despise it, there are also these sort of little cults that have formed around it, of people who either love it or hate it so much that they seem to act like it's either beyond praise or beyond criticism. I recently made a video where I didn't actually criticize The Last Jedi, but I got close enough to criticizing it that some of these people came out of the woodworks to at me, and today that's what I'm going to be taking a look at. In my first Last Jedi video, I was responding to the Skull and Glasses himself, Sean, and I had two of his main points to respond to. I did my best to not actually comment on the film itself and to remain neutral on it, because the point of the video wasn't to actually make any comments about The Last Jedi, but to talk about Sean's argumentation. I'm going to be assuming that you have seen that video for the rest of this one, just so that I don't have to devote several minutes of this video to explaining what I said in that video. But if you don't want to go back and watch it, you'll probably be able to get what's going on here. Now, of course, The Last Jedi is a huge source of controversy, so it's only natural that in that video I did get a few people disagreeing with me in the comments. And a lot of those people, despite the fact that I didn't agree with them, put their perspectives to me in respectful, eloquent, and insightful ways. But we both know that's not what you're here to see. Here's a comment from Street Lawyer. You're simply looking for flaws in The Last Jedi without actually thinking about your arguments. Okay, that's an interesting accusation, and it's very clearly the main thing they're trying to accuse me of, so let's bear it in mind moving forward. That I'm just looking for flaws in The Last Jedi without thinking about my arguments. Okay, so the first point this person has to make against me is, Rey's powers make absolute sense based on the precedent of Luke and Anakin's story. This is true equivalency. Okay, so just briefly, in Sean's video he basically says, people have a problem with Rey being overpowered, but Anakin was also overpowered, and so was Luke, implying that it's silly to have a problem with one of these things but not the other. In my video I point out that their achievements are actually quite different, and the reasons we're given that these characters are able to make these achievements are quite different as well, meaning that it's not unreasonable for a person to have a problem with one of these characters but not the other. But at no point do I actually comment on whether or not I think Rey's powers make sense. You're just looking for flaws without thinking about your arguments. Now, I did say that their achievements weren't equivalent, which is a viewpoint I still hold because I don't really find actually it is equivalent to be a particularly convincing argument. But you know what? Maybe they're not trying to change my mind or anything. Maybe they're just trying to say what they think, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for the time being. You know, if they're not actually trying to change my mind, this is fine. This is all you really need to say. There's no rule that you have to fully articulate why you believe everything you believe in every YouTube comment, so unless they are trying to change my mind, this is fine. The second point they make against me is, Holdo's actions are consistent with the military conduct of operational secrecy. Conduct that goes all the way back to the fucking Tsu. The fact that you don't understand it is evidence of your misunderstanding, not anything the film did. Some strong words there from Street Lawyer. Apparently I demonstrate a lack of understanding of the topic. Let's take a look back at what I actually said about Holdo's plan to see if that argument Holdo's water. Sean says he thinks that Holdo's plan makes sense. I've seen Holdo's plan covered in a lot of places before, so I don't really feel the need to cover it. Plus, I don't feel it's very relevant to what we're currently talking about, so I'm just going to skip straight past it. You're just looking for flaws without thinking about your arguments. What a huge lack of understanding of that I demonstrated by not talking about it at all. I didn't even say whether or not I agreed with Sean. The third and final point they make against me in their initial comment is, Snoke's backstory was not set up for a payoff, nor does it absolutely require a concrete explanation for his character or the story to work. You don't deserve an explanation simply because you want one. What are you, fucking retarded? Stop wasting everyone's fucking time. You're right there, buddy. So let's take another look back at my video to see how reasonable these claims are. Apparently I'm so entitled that I think something should be put in the film simply because I want it there. Well, what I said in the video was... Before this, by the way, I spent ages trying to think of a pun involving Snoke's name, like Holdo's water, but with Snoke's name, and the best I could come up with was Snokey Dokie, and I don't want to put that in. What did I say in the part of the video where I addressed Snoke? Fuck it, let's just roll the clip. Let's go back to the actual argument being made, that Snoke's lack of backstory, if you consider that a problem, is a problem created by The Force Awakens rather than The Last Jedi. Today's word of the day is... if. It's a word I wholeheartedly recommend you familiarize yourself with, because I find it really useful to understand what it actually means when someone says if. But just in case that wasn't clear enough for people, I did later on in the video go ahead and say this. I'm not saying here that a lack of backstory is necessarily an issue. There are plenty of good, mysterious characters. However, Sean's argument that if this is an issue, it's one caused by The Force Awakens rather than The Last Jedi, assumes that this is an issue. So to counter it, I'm gonna just have to assume that it is one as well. Now, I do understand how you can come to the conclusion based on watching my video that I want Snoke to have a backstory, and when I say you, I mean you, Street Lawyer, specifically. But I very clearly say that I'm not commenting on whether or not I think that's an issue. So... You're just looking for flaws without thinking about your arguments! You don't deserve an explanation simply because you weren't right. To be fair, Street Lawyer, I can totally see why you didn't want an explanation for Snoke, because when you get explanations, you just fucking ignore them. Now, I'm guessing there are a few people watching thinking something along the lines of, this person's probably a troll, right? You know, they're probably just trying to pull your leg. There's no way they actually believe these things. But no, later, after I appear in this thread, they start to be much more reasonable with the way they present their arguments. Which, by the way, I absolutely commend. Thank you so much, Street Lawyer, for stopping the insults as soon as I arrive. It would be better if you didn't insult me at all while making your arguments. And also, if you had, better arguments, but once you presented your perspective to me in a respectful way, it genuinely was helpful, so genuinely, man, thank you. A lot of people in response to counter-arguments just throw out more insults, so this is definitely a step up. I still think you've completely got the wrong idea about what I'm doing, and that your arguments aren't very good, but once we got over that initial hurdle of, what are you, fucking retarded? The discussion stopped being a shouting match and started being a valuable exchange of ideas, so good job. It's at this point, after their initial comment, that a very lovely person comes and responds to them. He's not wasting anyone's time. You're wasting your own time by choosing to watch a video that's just gonna rile you up. The actual details of what was said aren't really important going into the next bit, but there they are. Anyway, Street Lawyer responds with, I want to change people's minds though. I want to point out the contradictions in their thinking. I may be wasting my time, but that's my motivation for commenting. That was you trying to change people's minds? I can't imagine what you'd be like trying to be rude to someone. Today's word of the day is diplomacy. I'd like to point out that Street Lawyer didn't try to point out any contradictions in my thinking. The points they made were, you're just looking for flaws without thinking about your arguments, which is lovably ironic. They say, actually, Anakin and Rey are equivalent. Without backing it up. They said, actually, Holdo's plan does make sense, and they actually backed that one up, so good. Although it's unfortunate that I never said it didn't. And then they said, Snoke doesn't need a backstory, with no justification for that except calling me a retard. Wow, look how changed my mind is. But none of those things, even if Street Lawyer was right about them, would be contradictions in my thinking. They would just be errors I'd made. After Street Lawyer claims they're trying to change people's minds, we get a few more comments before we reach this. You're assuming Jay hates the movie, and you're ignoring the fact that he's very respectful of both the movie and Sean. Present arguments by all means, but maybe you could try matching Jay's respectful tone. I'm critiquing this guy's stupidity or his intellectual dishonesty. Neither of those things deserve any respect. So, just to be clear, according to you, people who make bad arguments don't deserve respect. Oops. I've gone back to once from where I came. All I care about are ideas, and the point of this guy's video was to give ammunition to the people who dislike it, so he's assuming they're correct. Hardly an objective presentation of the facts. It's generally accepted that the 2004 Catwoman film is pretty bad, but if someone were to criticize it by saying, there are no cats or women in this film, also you don't see any cleavage for the whole movie, which really sucks, plus it deviates from the comic, and all movies that deviate from the comics are bad. I would disagree with them and possibly even make a video debunking them because I would consider their arguments to be flawed. Can you see where I'm going with this? Street Lawyer's criticism in this comment actually boils down to, you're disagreeing with someone who likes the film. And that's it. And where are the points for the other side? I don't see them anywhere in this video. How is that not one-sided? Yeah, no one made the point that it wasn't one-sided. And granted, it is about one of the sides, because I'm responding to one video in it, because that's how response videos work. Maybe one day I'll find some criticism that I want to cover, and I'll do a separate video for that. But this is a film, not a battleground. Would you like me to show you who you're acting like right now?
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
So that's basically it, and that's because at that point I enter the comment thread, and after that Street Lawyer becomes a lot more respectful. Their arguments don't get any better, but they're a lot more respectful, so it's kind of less fun to look at. Although, let's just have a brief glimpse at some of the arguments they make going forward. There's these 3 comments where they basically tell me that Rey's powers actually do make sense, which isn't something I ever argued against, but they basically tell me that it's fine for a character to be powerful in ways that aren't explained explicitly, and people didn't have a problem with that for Luke, so why should they have a problem with it for Rey? They're being hypocritical. And yeah, this argument does work against anyone who hates Rey irrationally for no reason, but if someone who dislikes The Last Jedi is able to give you a reason that they find Rey and Luke different, then this argument falls down. And then you're back to talking about the actual qualities of the film again, so that little tangent about the other films was kind of pointless. Street Lawyer says, okay, you made a good point about Holdo's plan in reference to me saying I'd never said anything bad about Holdo's plan, but then is still determined for me to be the bad guy here, so says, my question would then be, why bring it up? If you're providing ammunition for the people who don't like this movie, then it would make sense that you must agree with them if you're only providing arguments for that side. No! Disagreeing with one person who praises something doesn't mean you agree with everyone who hates it. Stop trying to make this a battle between sides. I just like talking about films and argumentation surrounding films. There's nothing about Holdo's plan that doesn't make sense, so why provide the argument that there is? Well, because people who were familiar with Sean's video might expect me to cover it. It's one of the main talking points about The Last Jedi, and I was about to cover something about Holdo's plan without covering whether or not I thought it made sense. I felt that people deserved an explanation for that. You're just assuming that my motivations are ones you disagree with when there's no actual evidence within the video to support that. And this is the last one I'm going to do because man is this tiring. In response to me saying, I make it clear in the video that I'm only assuming Snoke needs a backstory because Sean does it in his argument. So to counter it, I need to go with that assumption. I never said that I believed Snoke needed a backstory. Street Lawyer comes back to me by saying, dude, you're just dodging my arguments by saying that Sean made them and not you. But you do make a bunch of arguments in your video. Why not engage with the things you said? I make it very clear in my video that that whole segment is operating under the assumption that Snoke's lack of backstory is a problem. Sean doesn't believe that Snoke's lack of backstory was a problem. He's just making arguments within the framework of the assumption that it is. If I were to remove that framework, I wouldn't be able to respond to the argument anymore. At no point do I say that I consider it to be a problem. The closest I come to it is saying that The Force Awakens raised the question of who Snoke was, which you can't deny it did, because so many people tried to answer that question. Okay, this has been tiring, but at the same time, it's also been really fun. I do hope you've enjoyed this, and I'd like to say a huge thanks to my patrons before I leave. It's you guys that make more experimental videos like this one possible. I do encourage anyone who wants to go and read that full comment thread, although if you do decide to engage Street Lawyer, please be respectful. Respect goes a long way. Other than that, yes, I did remain neutral on The Last Jedi again on purpose. I didn't say any comments about how I actually feel about the film, although probably someday soon I will be making a video about the aspects of it that I really like, and the aspects that I don't like so much. Although I know this video is going to be controversial anyway, just because it has The Last Jedi in the title, so what can you do?